This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Welcome, everybody, to the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. This is episode 92. On today's show, we've got why Ricochet was pulled from Monday Night Raw, Randy Orton teasing a possible debut in New Japan, as well as reviewing SmackDown and Raw. Doing it with me, as always, he's the one, he's the only, he's my cousin. He is the Doc, John Macaroon. What's up, cuz?
Always love playing the Stone Cold theme, baby. What a Monday Night Raw with the legends. Oh, man, as I listened to that theme, it was crazy, the ovation, the pop that Stone Cold got to end Monday Night Raw. I thought it was crazy, especially because of the fact that it overshadowed Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan. I really believe, cuz, if Stone Cold were around today in 2019, he'd be the biggest star still. And I don't know for you, but for me, I just feel like while we can respect Stone Cold, at the same time, I think it's a major indictment, and you and I have been talking about it, it's a major indictment on the brand because of the fact that the reason why this show happened, we'll talk about the Raw reunion to start this podcast. The reason why this happened, and the WWE is in a unique position, was other networks wanted them. So USA had to pay more money for the same programming. And they start to look at the ratings, and they go, dude, we're getting the same ratings, but we're paying more money. And, you know, the ratings have been down. It's been noted. And USA has been putting a little bit of pressure on WWE, having contacts, having talks, going, dude, okay, we are paying more money for the content, but we're not getting the goods back. So WWE decided, hey, let's call upon these legends. Let's bring them all back to get, in essence, a ratings boost. And that's what they got. But at the same time, when people look at it from the outside, you go, damn, your people that you have now in 2019 are nowhere close in terms of promos, nowhere near in terms of drawing power as a guy like Stone Cold Steve Austin, who's well past his prime. But at the same time, it's crazy because the way you properly do it, from how everyone's talking about it, is you're supposed to get a rub from the legends to your talent. But they didn't do that. They wanted to insert the legends to get over on the young talent, which was crazy. I thought it was a misuse of the legends. It was great to see them, but I felt like they could have used them in a much different way. Like, why on earth isn't Stone Cold talking to Kevin Owens? Why on earth isn't Stone Cold talking to Becky Lynch? I felt like you could have started to elevate the people you have if you would have used the legends properly. I just thought it was crazy the way in which that reunion shook out.
Yeah, the way WWE does things is very, very, very questionable, especially with all the talent on that roster. They have arguably the deepest roster of talented individuals, yet you can't get anybody over to the extent of a guy like Stone Cold Steve Austin. And I think what you said is 100% accurate. If you were to take Stone Cold Steve Austin and drop him on this roster right here, right now, right today, he'd be the most over guy. He would outshine everybody. And it's just because the way that they have done things. So WWE, there was a time period there where you had The Rock, you had Stone Cold Steve Austin. I think at one point both of them were dealing with injuries. And they had nobody seated at the top of the mountain in WWE. So you lost both your big draws. And Vince, it was a directive that basically came down from Vince. We will never, ever be put in a position like this ever again, where we have the two main stars of our programming hurt and out, and now we're just kind of spinning our wheels. So what Vince prefers to do is have a bunch of guys essentially all on the same playing field. So no one individual is more over than whoever else. You basically keep everybody almost like there's a glass ceiling. You keep everybody pushed down. And it's really, really messed up the way that Vince does it, because you've got guys who are charismatic and who are talented, and guys who could get over like Stone Cold Steve Austin and could get over like The Rock, yet he doesn't put them in a position to be able to do that. It's kind of messed up. And, you know, as far as Stone Cold Steve Austin goes, he was a guy who basically took those reins. He said, I'm going to take this and I'm going to do this. And I don't know if the mentality on this roster is like that. I think it was much more cutthroat when we were younger and we were growing up and watching it, whereas now it's everybody's friend. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it's business, but everybody's everybody's friend. Whereas Back then, it was if you're more over than me, you're taking food off my plate, and I just don't see that because everybody's got these bloated contracts. I mean, you've got guys like the Revival. I like the Revival. I think the Revival are a very good tag team. The thing is, are the Revival really special? They're not special in WWE. That's for damn sure. They're just kind of there. I know they put on good matches, but do they sell you on anything? Do they make you pop? I don't think they do. These guys are getting offered $500,000 to sign a multi-year contract. That's crazy money. Stone Cold Steve also wasn't seeing money like that, and if he was, he'd probably be sitting high on his horse, and he wouldn't be as hungry as he was. So I think just the landscape of wrestling has changed, and it's dramatically different. I mean, you could look at guys like Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. When they signed their contracts with WCW, it kind of revolutionized what was going on in the wrestling industry at the time. But those guys will even tell you, they got a little bit high on their hog and got a little bit sassy, especially when it came time to restructure and renegotiate their contracts. They ended up getting so much money that they're just kind of like, all right, cool. What do we care? And you kind of seen it in their performance, and you've seen it in their shape. They just kind of stopped caring. I think that's kind of where we are right now with wrestling in this day and age, just because the money is so bloated, and so many people are getting these crazy deals because Vince is just throwing money at guys to keep them all from going to AEW. So it's absolutely crazy right now. Something else that's crazy. AJ Styles, the club, we're calling it the OC now? What?
That was
what? What are we talking about?
That's the biggest buzzkill. I mean, when that happened, I saw the shirts, wasn't all that impressed by it. I just said, come on. And I was talking to Dennis Farrell and talking to everybody, and everyone's saying the same thing. Vince just won't let something that's popular somewhere else just take over. And he just had to put his imprint, his thumbprint on it. He wanted to call it the OC, and even if it was a recommendation from AJ Styles and the guys, you go, no, we're calling it the club. It's simple. Print the shirts, make the money, call it the club. The OC, I just think it fell flat, and it was so disappointing.
Awful.
It was awful, and especially in the manner in which they utilized those guys. They should have gotten the rub from Shawn Michaels and DX. Did they get the rub? No. You basically, in that show, trashed the group that you're trying to promote. What purpose does that give? I don't get it. I like the fact that it teased a little bit of seeing Shawn Michaels and AJ Styles, but it would have been just perfect to it would have been absolutely flawless to have the club and DX do the high five and then for DX to leave. That's all you had to do. That would have been sweet. You didn't have to continue it. You could have just, had them embrace and things like that because they go, you're one of us. But at the same time, because it didn't make any sense. I thought Seth Rollins and Triple H are feuding. I didn't think they reunited all of a sudden.
Yeah, all of a sudden they're on the team. Yeah, I know.
And that's the biggest turnoff is stories have to make sense, and you can't just start and stop stories to fit a reunion show. And the way that segment was written was piss poor, and nobody liked it. The OC, I thought, was very weak. And the other weak moment on Raw was Seth Rollins in terms of his 2 appearances on Raw, on Miz TV and with DX. I just said, you know what? It was not the way in which you want to present your number 1A contender for the Universal title, especially in comparison to how awesome and engaged the promo was from Stone Cold Steve Austin. You gave Seth Rollins prime mic time on Miz TV, and he used it to do what? You used it to embarrass and try to make fun of Paul Heyman. It came off as stupid. It came off as kind of silly and embarrassing, and I just thought, wow. It was one of the rare times where I say, I didn't want Seth Rollins to do a promo at all. And the crowd wasn't happy with it either. It seemed silly. It was odd because you view Seth Rollins just as far back as a couple months ago when it was him versus AJ Styles as marquee, top billing. But ever since he got with Becky and they went alongside that storyline, he's taken a step back. He looked amateurish. It looked really weird. It looked like year one Seth Rollins. I was greatly disappointed in Seth Rollins. I'm speechless and floored by the way in which he presented himself on that show.
Yeah, it's weird when you watch a guy like Seth Rollins who does this day in, day out, every single night. And then you get a guy like Stone Cold Steve Austin or a guy like John Cena who they basically make appearances. And those guys cut 2 of the best promos of the show. They did a fantastic job. and they got you engaged, and they got you up, and they got you going for it. And then you've got a guy like Seth Rollins who's supposed to be marquee. He's supposed to be one of those guys who's at the top of that level, like basically pushing on that glass ceiling that Vince McMahon has instilled. And yet his promo falls flat. It seems robotic. It doesn't seem to really make sense. Like the words that sometimes come out don't jive with the character. And this goes back to having scripted promos. I don't understand why guys have to have scripted promos. It doesn't make sense. If you're not going to speak like that or you're not going to talk like that, why are you going to go out there and say these things? None of it makes sense to me. When you have the mic in your hand, what are they going to do, turn your mic off? Because you're not reading word for word verbatim what they wrote? No. If anything, here's some notes. Here's some points. These are things that we want you to talk about. Now go spin it. You know, Stone Cold Steve Austin went out there and basically he spoke from the heart is really what that was. He was in character, but he spoke from the heart with everything he said. It was cool. It was great. It worked. It was awesome, right? John Cena, same deal. John Cena goes out there, and he always has this interaction with the crowd. It's always this back and forth, where the crowd will either be yelling something at him or they'll be cheering him. In this case, he was cheered. He was cheered loudly, and he made note of it. He even referenced it when he was talking. And those are things that I don't think today's superstars do, or at least do enough. Like you have this back and forth with the crowd. The crowd is there. They're part of the show. You need to involve them. Instead, Seth Rollins goes out there and he's very robotic and he's got to get through all of his lines. And sometimes, like Roman Reigns is probably the worst for this because he gets a ton of mic time and you can just see him stop and then think and then speak and then stop and then think and then speak. And you're just like, what is going on? Nobody does this. Why? Why is this happening? So it's a little bit frustrating. And speaking of Roman Reigns, we had this nice little back and forth with Roman Reigns and Samoa Joe. And I enjoyed this match. I thought this was one of the highlights from the Raw reunion because overall I didn't really enjoy the Raw reunion. I thought it felt like awkward storytelling. I felt like it didn't really do much as far as moving things along at the pace that it should for SummerSlam. But I do like this Samoa Joe Roman Reigns match that they had. And I wish this was more of a long-term feud. I wish we had this building for months and months and months, and these guys would fight at SummerSlam. I think that would be great. I think that would be an awesome match. I wish there was something on the line for it. I think it would kind of add to it. But I like when these two guys square up against each other because they have different styles, and Samoa Joe is a killer. Samoa Joe is a killer. WWE has done a bad job packaging him and selling him. But if you could get him going up against the new face of the company with Roman Reigns, I think it would be awesome. I think it would be great. Do you want to see a long-term feud between these two?
Yeah, it would be great. But at the same time, the way in which they back themselves in a corner with Samoa Joe and the way in which,
isn't it?
Yeah, and the way in which they're utilizing Roman Reigns, there's no win. I mean, Samoa Joe isn't valuable enough right now, the way in which they built him. And are you ready to have another feud where Samoa Joe loses? I mean, I was joking on Flick Chat, the place where we go to talk wrestling, a great application. I said to Adam Salget, friend of the podcast, I said, look, I think it'd be funny now to make it a bit where Samoa Joe is a destroyer, talks a lot of crap, but loses every match. I think it's kind of funny now in the manner in which you've used this guy that is really top echelon, that is a guy that deserves a push, but every time he's in a top feud, he gets crushed, he loses. So I just think that feud wouldn't get off the ground because Samoa Joe right now isn't believable. He's more in line with, it's really sad to say, he's almost in line to be the next 24/7 champ than he is to be the next U.S. or Intercontinental champ. That's the sad.
It's so spot on.
Isn't that sick? It's so wrong, especially with the way, too, that they have him walk to the ring. He looks mean, but it's not believable because of the fact of the way in which you booked him.
They've booked him so poorly. It's unbelievable.
I think this guy, you know how on Raw they gave Braun Strowman a squash match? I think for the next 2 months, just give Samoa Joe squash matches. I mean, I think that he's probably a guy that is in line for 8 wins in a row just all on TV against local talent. Why is it Braun Strowman? Braun Strowman doesn't need to be in there for 5 seconds with the jobber. Make it Samoa Joe. That's the guy that needs to be built.
You know what you could do, and just kind of thinking about this and playing this out in my head, and because this was a Raw reunion show, thinking back to the Attitude Era and thinking even further back from that, This right here is a prime opportunity for you to do some old school booking, right? Because you don't want to hurt Roman Reigns. You want to elevate him. But at some point, Samoa Joe's got to get a W or two, right? Or at least not take the loss, per se. Take the pin, I should say. So this is a prime example because Samoa Joe looked upset, looked angry, looked deranged before this match. So now you have this match playing out. And the moment Samoa Joe feels like he's losing or he's losing it, you can somehow get yourself disqualified. Whether it be you grab the ring bell and you bust Roman Reigns open, or you grab a steel chair and you do something sadistic with a steel chair, and that helps build the story out and kind of flesh it out. Now Samoa Joe looks like he's an absolute madman, and he's got Roman Reigns wounded. Why not build this out and stretch this out and turn this into a feud? Instead, you got the stop and start storyline going with Roman Reigns, because remember, it was who's the real Samoan, and now that went away, and now you're back to it, and now it went away. Now it's just too herky-jerky and too much going on, and Samoa Joe takes way too many L's. At some point, he either needs to get a win or just not lose the match. Do you know what I'm saying? It's very frustrating the way he is booked. Something not really frustrating. Do you like the push for Bray Wyatt? Bray Wyatt comes out as the Fiend, uses the mandible claw on Mick Foley. I thought this was awesome. And in the Flick chat, like you were mentioning, we do a lot of messaging there, and this wrestling kind of unfolds in front of us. We do a lot of talking back and forth. And you brought up Adam. Adam loves the Fiend. Adam loves Bray Wyatt. And right now, I think this is a highlight of WWE is what they're doing with Bray Wyatt's character. The hope is, and fingers crossed, that they don't screw this up.
100%. I like the way it's been used, and I think it was good to feed Mick Foley to the Fiend. I think it was great. Quite surprising. I think it was good to obviously get the rub, and the only character I felt like on the current roster that got it was the Fiend. I think it was good. But again, you got to be skeptical. How are they going to use it? But so far, people are enjoying it, and I think it's great. I think it's going to be something that potentially could be one of those marquee events that whenever you see it, when the lights go out, you're going to pop. I think it can be quite the angle going forward. It could be one of those 10-year angles where it could be anytime the lights go out, you freak out. But I don't know. The mask is just, I believe in it. I like the idea of it. I don't know. It's just the mask is weird looking to me. It just seems a little cartoonish. I'm not really scared by it. I just think it's a little bit weird.
Oh, it's a little bit spooky. It's a thing nightmares are made out of.
You think so? You think that's the proper, that you're okay with the mask itself and how he looks in it?
Yeah, I think the mask is great. I think the mask is exceptional.
Okay.
You don't like the mask?
I don't know, the way it comes off on TV, it just seems like one of those rubber masks that you see at Party City. You know, when you see it.
Oh no, dude! I think it's great.
You think it's high level? It's high level.
Yeah, I think it's terrifying.
I'm not terrified.
I do.
Same. I'm not terrified. I don't know. I'm not terrified by it. The music I think is great. I like the everything around it. I would just maybe have made the mask darker.
Like color-wise or creepier?
Maybe creepier. Yeah, maybe even more creepy. Maybe like, you know, kind of how like Mankind had the leather straps over his face, but you still could see his face. Stuff like that. Something like that a little bit. More Hannibal Lecter-ish, where you don't have all the weird cartoony Halloween type stuff. You just have like a mask with the mouth hole so that he can breathe and make it look really, really scary. Like kind of like a murderer.
Okay.
Makes sense?
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
A little more realistic, but it's still the character. I like the build for Bray Wyatt. I think it's going to pay off. I think that Bray Wyatt's going to be a character we're all going to remember for ages. So that's how we viewed Raw. The reunion was, I think, something that had some positive moments, but a lot of moments in which we thought could have been delivered a lot better, especially with using all those legends. But people wanted to see them. People wanted to see Hogan, Flair. They want to see Shawn Michaels. They want to see DX. A lot of people went, and the ratings did spike for that show, which I think will indicate that they will do this each and every year. They should. If it's going to produce a half a point rating, that's significant in the world of television. Now, when we turn our attention to SmackDown, it was just kind of a show. It was okay. Again, it was not boring, but again, it just didn't produce the events that we want. And a lot of the talk has been about the build for SummerSlam. And it's okay. I just think that it could be better. And that's the way it is with a show like SmackDown, especially when you give prominent time continuously to Shane McMahon. And the prominent news that was released was it's going to be at SummerSlam, Shane McMahon versus Kevin Owens. If Kevin Owens fails to win, he must leave WWE. Are you okay with that match? Do you think that's worthy? I think you and I might be on the same page. Kevin Owens deserves more. He deserves more than a rehashed feud with a guy he's already feuded with.
Yeah, I don't need to see Shane McMahon in a wrestling ring. I definitely don't. I wish there was a stipulation on this match where if Shane McMahon lost, he couldn't wrestle or be on WWE television for a long while. This is what's so messed up, right? You remember when Shane came back in Detroit, I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago. It was the biggest, loudest pop that you have heard in the longest time. And WWE has just crammed Shane McMahon down our throats. And now it has done a 180. I don't need to see Kevin Owens versus Shane McMahon. I don't want to see Kevin Owens versus Shane McMahon. Kevin Owens deserves more. He deserves better. And I would like to see him go after somebody else. Like let him fight Drew McIntyre. What the hell is Drew McIntyre doing right now? Drew McIntyre was a guy who earlier this year, both of us were saying, oh, this guy has championship written all over him. He's going to be a WWE champion. He could be a Universal champion. He's going to get and hold a belt. He's going to make it prestigious. And he's just kind of doing these meddling feuds with Cedric Alexander. What are we doing here in WWE? You've got stars, yet Shane McMahon has to get valuable time against a guy like Kevin Owens while a guy like Drew McIntyre is fighting somebody who got called up from 205 Live. This is what we're doing right now? It's just poor booking. It's a bad job. It just doesn't make sense to me. On the other hand, you I think get good booking here, or you have some material, you have some meat that you can chew on when Kofi Kingston calls out Randy Orton. And I think this is a SummerSlam match that we should want to see, that we need to see, because there is a storyline here. And they called back to it in Kofi's call out of Randy Orton, and they showed some video up on the Titantron, and Kofi basically voiced over it and narrated it, and basically called Randy Orton out saying, hey, you were the one who stopped my push, but I grinded, and now I'm here. I think this is going to be really interesting. I think this is going to be good. Kofi Kingston hasn't had a prime competitor or a big name superstar to go up against, and I think him taking on Randy Orton, I think this could solidify his run as WWE champion.
100%.
And I think this could be good.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm intrigued by this.
Yeah, I'm intrigued too. I think it'll be a good match, and I think that a guy like Kofi Kingston deserves a little bit of rub from a legend. By defeating and going over on Randy Orton, it'll be a good thing. It'll help to solidify his run going forward. But if they did decide to put the belt on Randy, would it be too soon?
Randy Orton is such a name in the industry and is such a name for WWE. I don't have a problem with you putting a belt on him. I think Kofi needs to win this match more than Randy needs the belt, if that makes sense. If we're looking at each of these individuals by themselves, I think Kofi needs a big marquee win more than Randy Orton needs a belt. So I wouldn't put the belt on Randy Orton. I'd have Kofi win this, and I'd have Kofi win it clean. I'd have him have to come up against some type of crazy obstacle and somehow keep fighting to win the championship. But in the end, he gets the victory.
Okay, so for the verdict, I'm not sure there's a winner this week. Are you okay with giving them an equal performance, a half each? Because I don't know what show was better. I can't distinctly decide.
I was thinking the same thing. I definitely didn't care too much for the reunion show, but I popped hard whenever I seen. Like, I love John Cena, so I popped hard when I seen Cena. I love Stone Cold, popped hard for Stone Cold. I thought it was funny looking at the faces of all of the former black superstars when Hulk Hogan was out there, because they all just wanted to punch him in the face. Oh yeah, they looked so upset, and rightfully so. I liked the callback from the reunion show, but I think SmackDown was maybe a little bit of a better show, so I have no problem splitting the points. At this time, Raw is trailing 34 to 57.5. Raw also has that no credit. I want to move into AEW, and we're recording this on a Wednesday, and AEW and TNT just sent out a press release. Wednesday, October 2nd, at Capital One Arena, AEW will broadcast their very first show on TNT. So we thought we were going to get a Wednesday day. We are getting that Wednesday day. It will start October 2nd for AEW. How do you feel about AEW broadcasting on Wednesdays?
See, I think it's a good decision, but I don't know why you just don't naturally move into that Tuesday slot, because SmackDown was on Tuesday. There's an inherent wrestling base there, and because SmackDown is going to be broadcasting on Friday in the fall, Wednesday, I guess, is okay, but here's the problem. There is an inherent fan base that watches NXT. There is inherent competition. Why would you do that? Especially when there's an open time slot that you could take. Maybe they just, in terms of the schedule, wanted to do that. They want to be different. I'm just not used to, at this point in time, watching wrestling on a Wednesday. I don't think there's been really, outside of the network and NXT, a real show on a Wednesday that's must-see. So it's unique. It's fine. But I probably, if it was 1A for me, I would have chosen a Tuesday.
Yeah, I'd have went with a Tuesday as well. I don't have a problem with it being on Wednesday. Wednesday works, I guess. I mean, if you're trying to do your own thing and establish your own, I guess, your own path, you're not really necessarily trying to pick up anything from WWE, cool, makes sense. You also have to realize, too, they are on TNT. TNT has different deals with the NBA. So I think it's kind of trying to work around a time slot that will, one, boost TNT's ratings, as well as working around their prior obligations with the NBA. So I kind of think that's why the Wednesday date works for them.
Because here's the thing, too. Here's the disadvantage that they have, especially with the talk of counter-programming. Now WWE knows when the show is going to air. They can just air great matches and tape great stuff to air on Wednesday to compete with AEW. So, I mean, NXT can step up. They can do better shows. They can put a Johnny Gargano match on a Wednesday at 8 o'clock that could potentially compete with AEW. So I just find it interesting that AEW chose a Wednesday when inherently there was a day open. Is there a pro to making this decision? I mean, you have now given the call to action. All your fans know about it. You have months to promote it. And I think the biggest momentum will be what storylines are going to come out of All In. And I think that if that takes place, then you're going to have great television. I think the end game for AEW is going to be fine. It's just a matter of particular for us. I think that I think Wednesday, October 2nd, is a fine release date. The pay-per-view is going to be the massive, massive boost for that television show.
Since we're talking about the pay-per-view, since you brought that up, this just popped in my head. The last couple pay-per-views for AEW have been on Saturdays, which I myself like. I think that's awesome. Do you think that they continue to do their pay-per-views on Saturdays? And would you prefer them be on Saturday, or would you prefer them to be on Sunday?
No, I would prefer them to be on Saturday. I like Saturday because it's a fun night.
I think it's awesome.
Yep, I think it's a great day, and you can then rehash and watch all the videos on Sunday and recap everything and watch better parts again. I think having pay-per-views on Saturday is great for AEW. They've been fine. You just got to have better matches. You got to have you got to promote the women a little bit better. You got to have decent storylines, and you got to up the production just 5% in terms of making sure that you don't miss your marks and you don't have interruptions. And basically, you got to be tight with the time. You can't, I mean, the difference between 20 and 25 minutes is huge for a show. It adds up. 8 matches, 5 minutes, everyone going over, that's 40 minutes. And that could be a show going 2:45 or a show going 3 hours and a half. And I think the tight window for pay-per-views, in my opinion, you don't have to have a set time. You don't got to be like 8 to 10:30. Anywhere between 2.5 hours and 3 hours where we know, okay, if it's 11 o'clock, 11:01, this will be done.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I love a Saturday pay-per-view. I think they're great. And for all the reasons you said, you get to Sunday, you can kind of talk with your friends. You can go back and forth and say, oh, hey, did you see this video? Or, hey, did you see this? Or what about this? Check this out. On top of it, you don't have to worry about if it does run long, like WWE notoriously runs long, especially if it's a WrestleMania. You can plan on being up to almost 1 o'clock watching a WrestleMania, which is horrible. There's no reason you should have to watch 8 hours of wrestling. It's awful.
Oh, man.
So you can count on that with WWE. If it runs long, or if they're able to buy that extra time, you don't have to worry about, oh, how's this going to impact your day? Because most people have Sundays off. So you don't have to necessarily worry about it, which I think is fantastic. I love the Saturday pay-per-views. I wish WWE would go to a Saturday pay-per-view. I think it's great. As far as the pro for a Wednesday, I don't really know if there is necessarily a pro for a Wednesday AEW time slot on TNT. I think what it does is it differentiates you from WWE because now you're not taking that Tuesday. The thing is, you are now going head-to-head with NXT, so that'll be interesting to see how that works out. Also, you do get a day break. If you're a wrestling viewer, you do now get a day break, essentially. Like, I don't watch a lot of NXT. I watch some NXT. I don't watch a ton. I'm not like, oh, my God, it's Wednesday. I've got to watch NXT. I will peruse NXT, and I'll be like, oh, that's an interesting match. I'll go watch that, or I'll go find something archived, and I'll watch that. But I'm not sitting down to watch NXT. So now what you have is you have Monday night for Raw. You get a day off. You then get Wednesday for AEW, a day off, and then you get SmackDown on Friday. So I think having that day off kind of breaks up the monotony a little bit, because sometimes I do find it to be a little bit of a struggle to make it all the way through a Monday Night Raw and then have to turn around and make it through a SmackDown. Generally, I enjoy SmackDown more than I enjoy Monday Night Raws, and it's a little bit easier to digest because it is a 2-hour time block instead of that long 3-hour time block. But I think that might be a built-in advantage to have a bit of a day off. So you kind of get a reset, which I think is cool. We'll see how this works out, though. And I think as AEW comes into play and right around that October 2nd date, I think we're going to have to change the verdict up a little bit. I think we're going to have Raw, SmackDown, and we're going to have AEW on there as well, and we'll have to give check marks to those three programs and see who gets the win.
Well, we can, or we can just compete, have WWE compete with themselves, and AEW just gets a grade. We can grade AEW. You can discuss
that.
Yeah, just grade the show.
We'll work this out. We'll figure this out as it kind of evolves. This program and this network is constantly evolving, so this show will constantly evolve as well.
No doubt about it. Hit me with this week's professional wrestling news and notes. What you got?
Okay, so Randy Orton and Will Ospreay in New Japan. What? So the Viper and Will Ospreay teased a match on Twitter this week in an exchange that went a little something like this. Ospreay said, execute the plan that makes you smile every single minute of every single day. Orton, being Orton, said, good luck with that shit. Orton, realistically speaking, there's nothing you could plan that makes you smile every single minute of every single day. But WWE is all about putting smiles on faces. Ospreay versus Orton. 6/20/20. Ospreay said, realistically, nah, maybe you got me there. I'm happy, though. Happy you are happy where you are. But unfortunately, my friend, I'm here for the long run. I mean, you're like a multi-time champ. You could just leave for a bit, come here for Ospreay versus Orton, then go back. Just saying. Orton said, sounds like money to me. I'll ask Tuesday at SmackDown Live since I'm not on the Raw reunion. Hashtag Raw, hashtag WWE, hashtag WTF. So I found that to be interesting. I think it'd be cool to see Randy Orton in New Japan and doing something different. Randy Orton is a guy who he's got that crossover, so he could totally make it in New Japan, and it would be super, super interesting and a lot of fun. So it doesn't appear that Eric Bischoff will be in charge of SmackDown Creative. This is starting to get a little bit confusing, but it seems like Bischoff has been brought in more as a proxy to work with WWE and Fox, much like a middleman smoothing the transition from USA, NBC, Universal to the Fox network. He's just kind of the figurehead, the front man for WWE, kind of making sure everything falls into place with the Fox network. So don't count on Eric Bischoff being in charge of SmackDown Creative anytime soon. Ricochet was pulled from Monday Night Raw. He is dealing with an elbow infection, so that'll have to be monitored and watched. He was pulled at the very, very last moment from the show. Also, Charlotte Flair, she had a call-out on SmackDown on Tuesday night. It appears that WWE is trying to work something out with Trish Stratus to where those two face off at SummerSlam.
Oh.
So that'll be interesting. All Elite's Jon Moxley is set to face Josh Barnett at Game Changer Wrestling presents Josh Barnett's Bloodsport 2 in Atlantic City in New Jersey on September 14th. This match will reportedly be a worked MMA-style match and the last big opportunity for Moxley outside of AEW because, as we mentioned before, their television tapings will be getting underway on October 2nd. So if you want to see Jon Moxley do his MMA or his best impression of an MMA fight, you can check that out at Josh Barnett's Bloodsport 2 in Atlantic City. And that's what I got for this week's news and notes.
Great wrestling podcast, sir. You can follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. If you've agreed or disagreed with anything that we've said today, head on over to Flick, like Adam mentioned. All you got to do is go to the Google Play Store or the Apple Store, type in Flick Chat, and you can find the invite link. And all you got to do is type in these 3 letters, DSP, and you join the group. It's a great group chat application. We talk wrestling. We air our podcast. You can listen to the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast directly in the Flick Chat application. We really feel like it's a great way for podcasters to enhance their engagement, to enhance the relationship with the audience, and we love talking about AEW, WWE, Impact Wrestling, all the news and notes regarding the world of professional wrestling. Support those who support us. You can follow Dennis Farrell on Twitter at Dennis77Farrell. Check out the Wrestling Perspective podcast, airs on our network as well, or head on over to WrestlingPerspectivePodcast.com. I enjoyed it, sir. Great week of wrestling ahead. Hopefully some good news takes place and Summerslam, the build continues. We hope that some more exciting matchups take place, and hopefully WWE, when you go forward, realizes, hey, it's all about enhancement. It's all about making sure that your talent gets over. And the worst way to get them over is to have them getting their ass kicked by the legends. The way you get them over is by giving them a rub, by letting them take the shine off of some of the legends, by having some interactions, just by being in the present. Look, Mick Foley gave the rub to Bray Wyatt. Others deserved it, and that's the way it has to be going forward. You have to elevate the stars. Otherwise, when this battle takes place between AEW and WWE, the World Wrestling Entertainment will be on the losing end if they don't continue to elevate their stars. Talk soon, brother. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely, man. This was fun.